Today is a WAFF 48 First Alert Weather Day. Sponsored by Mr. Electric, your area expert for home Generac generators.
All right, thanks for taking a break from Olympics and joining us here for our top stories and, of course, the weather, as it is a First Alert Weather Day. We got Jeff here tracking the air quality, and we had some of that rain come through and knock a bit of that dust out of the air.
It did. And the 48 First Alert Weather Day originally was issued for the air quality issues, but now we can kind of just tack on a few thunderstorms as well.
Yeah,
loud, yeah, very much so. They came ripping through here at the station, and many of you have been talking to me online about it, and some really heavy rainfall. The one thing that really jumps out at me right now is this line that extends from northeast Alabama and now cuts through areas of like towards Coleman and then back into Double Springs. Look at all the lightning strikes with this, up to 258. There's nothing severe at this time, but we've had wind gusts over 40 miles an hour and dangerous lightning with this too. And the lightning is not part of the severe criteria. So if you have a storm that moves into your area and it's not severe thunderstorm warned, it can still have dangerous lightning with it and those wind gusts of 40 miles an hour and, of course, heavy rainfall. So here's the top edge of it, or the northernmost part of it, right? So Long Island and Bryant, and this extends south now, moving into Ider, and also some heavy rain just to the east of you in Stevenson and Hollywood. The line breaks up just a bit as you work your way south on 72, but picks right back up again in Scottsboro, and then Pleasant Grove. You just had some very heavy rainfall, probably still raining, but probably backed off just a little bit in intensity. That rain will continue to move south and east as we go into the next 20-30 minutes. So Grant, you got some heavy rainfall moving into your area, moving away from Woodville. Probably some pretty gusty winds up to about 40 miles an hour in New Hope. That line continues to move off to the south and east, moving along 431, Union Grove on your doorstep, and then working south and west, Eva, Vinemont, areas down towards the south into Baileyton, getting into some heavy rainfall and some gusty winds. I'll zoom out and I'll put the lightning back in it, and look at all these lightning strikes, just incredible. Moving south and east, so areas north and west, nothing for you right now, but there's another line of storms that could pop this afternoon. This first line, though, is going to probably do a lot to kind of squash that second line's intensity, but there's still more rain in the forecast after 3 p.m. So where we have probably the strongest winds right now, from about Scottsboro swinging back to Grant and Union Grove, that's where we could have a little bit in the way of some 40-mile-per-hour winds. The storms all sparked by a frontal boundary. There's the front, and there's the rainfall. And this front's going to do a couple things. It's bringing the rain now. It's also going to bring a little bit less humidity in time for the weekend. It's also going to start to clear away some of that Saharan dust that we had on this morning. All those sunrises we showed you this morning that were actually very picturesque. That's what the dust does. It enhances the color of the sunrise and sunsets, but it's not good for air quality. We're going to clear all that out just in time for the weekend, and we'll do that by triggering a whole bunch of scattered thunderstorms this afternoon. Temperatures have really taken a hit. That was the headline today, but this heat advisory remains in place. But with this line of storms ripping across the area, I mean, temperatures are in the 70s and not even hitting 80 degrees for parts of the area. But if you haven't had a storm yet, you're at 92 in Scottsboro and 90 in Albertville. So temperatures all over the place. If you had a storm, you're not as hot as everybody else. But the one thing we all have, humidity. It is so sticky outside. Heat index values where you haven't had a storm are over 100 degrees, and Pulaski up to 105 now, where you missed out on the storm. So humidity outlook, front comes through, drops us back just in time for the weekend. It'll feel a bit more bearable, and we have to do that with the line of storms, one moving south and east, the one we have now, and then a redevelopment of storms behind it through about 3, 4, 5 o'clock. Most of the activity should wind down by about 8. Heavy rain, gusty winds, and frequent lightning, all possible. Once the storms move on out, enjoy the weekend. Mainly dry, low 90s, less humid, more in the way of humidity on Monday, and very hot. Temperatures quickly returning back to the mid-90s, and that's where they'll stay for much of next week when the Trash Pandas come back into town on Tuesday.
All right, Jeff D., thank you. Well, we're following breaking news. A prison guard has been arrested accused of smuggling contraband into the Limestone Correctional Facility. Monica Blankeny was arrested on Wednesday. It's unclear what contraband she's accused of smuggling, but Blankeny has resigned from her position with the Department of Corrections. And new at noon, a Morgan County murder suspect appeared in court today for a mental evaluation. Bobby Hamblin's evaluation is in connection to his 2020 arrest for the shooting death of his roommate. Hamblin is charged for David McCluskey's shooting death. Hamblin was arrested 4 years ago after McCluskey's body was found floating in the Tennessee River. And also new at noon, Coleman County Sheriff Matt Gentry announced today he will not seek a fourth term in office. He'll leave office after his term ends in January of 2027. And Gentry has served as Coleman County Sheriff since 2015. He won his past two elections without any opposition. Well, an elderly Russellville man has been found safe. Russellville police say 81-year-old Jack Harrison was found safely with non-life-threatening injuries last night. He was reported missing early Thursday morning after not being seen since Tuesday. And now to Blount County. Two foster parents are facing charges accused of killing a Marshall County toddler that was placed in their care. Mason and Brooklyn Grimes are now facing multiple charges, including capital murder and child abuse. Sheriff Mark Moon says the pair knew that child had health issues but did not seek adequate medical care.
That the child was diagnosed with several congenital disorders. Follow-up appointments were scheduled for October of the same year, but the victim was not taken back to the doctor. It was also discovered by medical records that the victim had lost over 50% of his body weight.
So investigators say 3 other foster and adopted children were found living in that home, but they've all since been relocated. And foster parents are required to go through extensive training on abuse and neglect. They're fingerprinted, their financial records are examined, and caseworkers from DHR are supposed to be doing in-home visits. We reached out to the president of the Madison County Foster and Adopted Parent Association, who's been a foster parent for almost 10 years, to weigh in on this case.
It's part of our tagline for McFAP is get attached, because once a child comes into your home, they need that hope, that love, that support, and that structure that they may not be getting at home or from the environment they came from. So, and unfortunately, things like this happen. It's horrible when it does, but a lot of times people see the bad and not necessarily the good. There's a whole lot more good parents, foster parents out there than there are bad.
Now, Mason and Brooklyn Grimes are being held in the Blount County Jail without bond. Now, around Alabama, a law is in effect that shields public officials' personal information from being released in public records. It's also known as doxing. Under this new law, it's a misdemeanor for someone to release personal information with bad intent the first time. If it's done repeatedly, it becomes a felony. The law also allows public officials to remove certain personal information from public records, like an address. Former U.S. Attorney and current security official Jay Town says he thinks a lot of people will benefit from this new law.
I don't want defendants to know where my family lives when I'm out of town. There's agencies and offices that you can address those grievances at. You don't need to go to the person's home. We still have the ability to address grievances with our government under the First Amendment or any public official, but you've never had the right to go to their homes and harass them.
So one of the most common forms of doxing is swatting. That's when someone calls in a fake threat to police. Well, today was the first day of school for Limestone County students. Florence and Muscle Shoals City students will begin the new school year on Monday. By the way, you can find a full list of start dates across the valley right now on our website, WAFF.com. And school officials in Huntsville are giving teachers a new resource when it comes to disciplining students. Huntsville administrators are rolling out the Teachers Bill of Rights. Under this measure, disobeying teachers, disrupting class, and using explicit language at a teacher will be counted as an infraction. Administrator Melissa V.C. Lindsay says this is meant to hold students accountable.
The students will deal with those incidents as they occur with day-to-day consequences, and then they'll move to a level 1 consequence, which will be an in-class consequence. And when it moves to a level where the students are at a level 2 and they need to be removed, they will contact the principal and someone will come to remove the student from the classroom.
So she said teachers built classroom management plans ahead of Thursday's first day of classes to implement those new rules. Well, the results are in from yesterday's primary elections in Tennessee. Republican Marsha Blackburn winning the GOP Senate primary over Tress Whittam with almost 90% of the vote. Blackburn, the incumbent, is looking for another 6-year term. On the Democratic side, State House Representative Gloria Johnson winning. She will face Blackburn in the general election in November. And to Lincoln County, Toll Malone beat out Joyce McConnell and Mike Pitts to become sheriff. Now in Mobile, 3 couples sued a hospital and in vitro fertilization clinic over the accidental destruction of their frozen embryos. Now since then, 2 of the couples have dropped their lawsuits. This is just a few months after the Alabama Supreme Court ruled they could pursue wrongful death claims. The court says embryos can be considered children. The judge granted the lawsuit dismissal with prejudice. This prevents the couples from pursuing the case again in the future. Now lawyers for both couples have not explained why they dropped their claims. And now to Montgomery, where a former Walker County Corrections officer has agreed to plead guilty. Joshua Jones is facing federal criminal charges for the death of Tony Mitchell. He has agreed to plead guilty to 2 counts connected to deprivation of rights. Filings showed Mitchell could not walk or stand on his own when he was arrived at jail. Jones could face life in prison. Well, thanks for joining us. We'll be back here streaming 48 News at 4 while Olympic coverage continues right here on NBC News. Look for us on Roku, Amazon, Fire Stick, and YouTube. Our regular newscast returns tonight at 5. Have a great weekend.